Hi everyone, it's Yvette from Letslace. In this video I'll explain what a catch pin is and show you how to use it when making buck's point lace. This diagram shows how the buck's point ground is linked to the foot side on the right hand side of the motif. It shows you what buck's point looks like if a catch pin is used to provide support when you link the ground to the foot side. Notice the series of loops that is so characteristic of the buck's point foot side. But what is a catch pin, and why is it necessary to use a catch pin when making buck's point lace? In my experience, this is probably the thing that causes the most confusion for lace makers when they start making buck's point lace. And many lace makers want to give up at this point because they find it too frustrating to work out how and why they need to use a catch pin. But once you understand why you need to use a catch pin, you will realize soon enough that it's not hard at all. So let's demystify the catch pin once and for all. Notice the direction in which the threads travel. Look at what happens to the red thread as the worker pair works through the passive pairs from right to left to join the ground, and is then used to make a buck's point ground stitch by making a half stitch and then twisting both pairs twice. Because there is an uneven number of twists, it results in the red thread making a U-turn without being anchored or supported by the pin that is typically put up between the pairs when you make a buck's point ground stitch. After making the U-turn, the red thread ends up working back through the passive pairs on the right hand side of the motif. This diagram shows what happens when you tension the red thread that has just made the U-turn and work back through the passive pairs on the right hand side. Because the red thread is not supported by a pin, there's nothing to anchor it and keep it in place when you tension it. So you'll end up with an unsightly line made up of the two black threads, rather than the loops characteristic of buck's point as illustrated in the previous diagram. To prevent this from happening, you need to use a catch pin. So when you work the buck's point ground stitch directly next to the passive pairs, you don't place a pin between the two pairs used to work the buck's point ground stitch as you would normally do. Instead, you place the pin beside the two pairs that made the buck's point ground stitch. So you place the pin between the buck's point ground stitch and the passive pairs on the right hand side of the motif. This means that the red thread will have to travel around the pin before it makes a U-turn, which means it'll be anchored and kept in place when you tension it. And this is how you do it in practice. I want to start working a row of buck's point ground stitches from the right hand side to the left hand side of the lace. I make the first buck's point ground stitch next to the passive pairs. To do that, I use the pair that's just worked through the two passive pairs. I put 3 twists on the worker pair, and then I use the worker pair plus the pair to its left to make a buck's point ground stitch. I make a half stitch, and then I twist both pairs twice. Normally you'd put up a pin between these two pairs, but because the buck's point ground stitch is immediately next to the passive pairs, you need to use a catch pin instead. So you place the pin beside the two pairs that made the buck's point ground stitch, so that it's between the buck's point ground stitch and the passive pairs on the right hand side of the motif. And then you take the right hand pair and work back through the two passive pairs to make a picot on the right hand side. If you tension this pair, the catch pin anchors the thread. Normally we'd use the worker pair to make a picot on the right hand side of the work, but for the purpose of this video we won't be doing that. Instead we'll be returning to the buck's point ground and use the left hand pair from the first buck's point ground stitch to continue working buck's point ground. Make a half stitch and put 2 twists on both pairs, and then put up a pin between these pairs in the usual way. That brings us to the end of this video. To see more videos demonstrating bobbin lace techniques, please subscribe to Letslace's YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.